is a bridge in Portugal that I walked across in 2021. I was in a group and we had a guide, and it was still absolutely terrifying. But when you looked around at the view, it was also pretty exhilarating. It's a lot like adolescence, isn't it? A long, shaky bridge we all have to cross in order to get from childhood to adulthood. It's exciting, uncertain, yet full of possibility. But it can feel scary and unstable, especially if you're walking alone. That's why in my book, Thrive, I use a bridge as the central metaphor for adolescence. Because the question isn't whether young people are going to cross this bridge. They are. The question is, what kind of bridge are we building for them? Are the planks strong? Are the cables secure? Is there someone walking beside them? I think a lot about the bridge I crossed when I grew up in Atlanta. I bet some of you are holding in some laughs as you look at me as a teenager. That's my vulnerable moment. I was kind of awkward as a teen, but aren't we all? I remember many of the important milestones that you see on this slide. Things like my very first job at Macy's when I was 16 years old. That was the bottom picture there, was sort of my ID photo for that job. Things like going to the prom and graduating from high school and college. But I also remember things that you don't see on this slide. Things like driving my Buick Skyhawk too fast on the highway, or drinking wine coolers with my girlfriends after football games. These were all regular teenage thrills. And all those experiences and my really loving parents shaped who I became as an adult. But looking back, I realized I had amazing people walking beside me. I had guardrails, and I had lots of opportunities to figure out my interests and build leadership skills and safely explore the world around me. But every young person isn't that lucky. There are 48 million adolescents on this bridge right now in the United States. And many of them are crossing without the supports they need to make it safely to adulthood. And so using all we know about what's happening during this time of development would certainly help us serve those 48 million young people better. I'm going to start by grounding us in the science of adolescence. Thank you, Andrew. I'm glad there was a scientist before me to make sure that these facts are right. But I'll do my best to give you my version of adolescent science. So much of what I know is informed by Dr. Galvan and the UCLA team. Your research has really been catalytic to Casey and fundamentally reshaped how we think about adolescence. And so it's truly an honor to be able to share this perspective with you all today. Because the truth is that most of us were never taught this science. We learned about puberty and we learned about hormones, but nobody ever told us about what was happening inside our teenage brains and how that development shapes judgment, learning, motivation, and decision making. So here's the slide that's in my book, and it helps to explain the fact that our brains grow from the back to the front, and it starts in the brain stem where basic functions like breathing and blinking happen and your heartbeat. But as you move forward towards that prefrontal cortex, it's responsible for the planning and impulse control and complex decision making. And as Andrew said, it's not fully developed until your mid-20s. When I talk to parents and I tell them it's not 18, it's not 21, it's actually 24, you can see them start blinking very slowly. And the ahas start to happen for them as they realize why they are still parenting intensely into those mid-20s. That gap between a highly active reward system and a still developing regulatory system, as you heard, isn't a flaw, it's a feature. And it fuels exploration, creativity, risk-taking, and learning. But it also means that the structures and incentives and relationships around young people matter tremendously. And so during this window, the brain is highly adaptable and highly sensitive to context. It wires itself in response to environments and experiences that surround it. So support and stability strengthen judgment and resilience. But chronic stress can shape development in very different ways. So we got to remember context isn't just background, it is actually what we need to build young brains. Science, as you heard, has important implications for how we see and serve young people because a lot of what we label as bad behavior in teens is actually just biology. So this center has done so much great research on this topic. I'll hit some of the highlights that are really informing our work, and then I'm going to give you some examples about how we are applying it. First, we have to reframe risk and realize that adolescents are wired to explore and test limits. It's so important in our work, particularly around juvenile justice. That drive isn't something to shut down, it's something to channel, because healthy risk-taking is how young people discover who they are, is how they build confidence and develop new skills. So the problem isn't that teens take risks. The issue comes when we fail to create environments where those risks are safe and supported and instructive. When young people stumble, and they inevitably will, anybody else stumble when you were a young person? I see every hand raised in here. They don't need punishment as much as they need coaching. I've had to learn this with my own adolescent. She's asleep upstairs. She promised she was coming to this speech, but she stayed out too late last night, and so I walked past her as I came down here, and I thought, that is adolescence in action right there. Her favorite statement when she makes a mistake is, but my prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet. She knows a little bit about her own brain science, and she is not wrong, but what she really needs in that moment is not a neuroscience debate. What she needs is guidance and boundaries, and to know that I am still in her corner every hour of every day. That brings me to my second big insight. Young people crave connection, not just with their peers, but with adults as well. Because relationships with caring adults are one of the strongest buffers a young person can have and one of the most powerful ways to help them get back on track. Young people crave our guidance and perspective. Even if you think they are not listening to you, they absolutely are. And the final big takeaway is that young people learn best by doing, not by being told, not by being controlled, but by engaging in real life experiences that stretch them with guidance along the way. They need opportunities to try, to mess up, to reflect and try again, because that's how the brain builds judgment, resilience, and self-regulation. But that kind of development requires adults who create a safe room for growth, high expectations paired with high support. Too often, our systems do the exact opposite. We over-control when we should coach. We punish mistakes instead of treating them like a natural part of learning. And in doing so, we sometimes undermine the very capabilities we are trying to build in young people. So if we want young people to become capable decision makers, we have to give them developmentally appropriate opportunities to make decisions. So when I became president of the Casey Foundation a few years ago, I knew we had to improve the ways that we served young people across all of our work. They actually showed up in all of our work, but we didn't name them as a priority population for us. They showed up in child welfare as the young people most often in group care, in juvenile justice as the young people who were being incarcerated, to education and job training as the young people we most needed to help get on this path to opportunity. So that's why I worked with our team to create Thrive by 25, and it's built on the very brain science that we're talking about. And it's our organization's commitment to ensure that young people who are 14 to 24 have these 5 key things we think they need: their basic needs met, relationships with caring adults, opportunities to learn and earn, the opportunity to get support in learning how to manage money, and chances to lead in their communities. If you think about it, these are the cables that hold up that bridge that they are walking across. And I'll be honest with you, when we first started working on this framework, we didn't include basic needs in it. We were thinking about all these aspirational things we wanted young people to have. And we had focus groups with young people. And I met a young man who said he had watched his best friend be killed. And he had never gotten the mental health supports he needed to overcome that trauma. And it had caused him to cycle in and out of college because he was just unable to overcome that trauma. And it was just such an important reminder that you cannot thrive if you are struggling to survive. And so we went back and looked at our framework and added basic needs as a core part of our work, because the truth is stability has to be the floor. It's not optional, and it shouldn't be the ceiling of what we're hoping for folks. And if we believe that, then our job is clear. We've got to strengthen the bridge that young people are crossing, which is very different than the bridge that you and I crossed. The cost of living continues to grow. AI is changing school and work. None of us survived a global pandemic when we were teenagers, and navigating a complex world is extraordinarily intimidating for young people. It's intimidating for me sometimes, so I can't imagine what it's like for them. So to get them across, we've got to make sure that their foundation is stable, from housing to food to healthcare. We need to widen that path to opportunity with skills, financial knowledge, and real work experience. And we have to make sure they're not walking across that bridge alone. Every young person deserves somebody standing beside them who says, I see you, I believe in you, keep going. That's how you reach the other side, not just surviving, but truly thriving. So let's talk about how we're using this in our work. One of the most powerful ways we're trying to strengthen the bridge is through an effort we've led for 25 years called the Jim Casey Youth Opportunities Initiative. And it focuses on young people facing some of the steepest barriers, those who are aging out of the foster care system without a permanent adult in their lives. Imagine crossing into adulthood without a permanent family, nobody to talk through your challenges with, nobody to explain credit, no safety net if you stumble. And if you have adult children, you know how much they still need you after they're 18 years old. So the initiative is designed to build financial stability and independence in ways that align with adolescent development and to give them some of these skills they're going to need as they become adults. It has a lot of components, but one of them is called an opportunity passport. And it helps young people open bank accounts, receive matched dollars for their savings when they're trying to save for things like a car or housing or their education. To date, more than 21,000 young people in the foster care system have used Opportunity Passport and received over $30 million in matched savings. But it isn't just about the money. They are coached through their decisions. They're learning how to budget and plan and make trade-offs. And they're strengthening their executive functioning in real time and making real-world choices with support. When their savings are matched, they experience something really powerful, how effort can lead to opportunity. That's healthy risk-taking with a safety net. Through our Youth Leadership Institute, young people with lived experience in foster care are advocating for the policy changes that will help young people just like them. And through our Jim Casey Brain Frames project, which is actually how I learned about adolescent brain science, we give adults in child welfare simple, practical tools on adolescent brain science that helps them better understand the young people that they are serving and how to support them the right way. So for 25 years, the Jim Casey Initiative has really helped thousands of young people build assets, build skills, and build voice. And it's helping strengthen that bridge with opportunity, guidance, and belief. In addition to foster care, there's another way young people can be knocked off course, and that's involvement in the justice system. Despite what headlines suggest, fewer than 1% of young people ever end up in the juvenile justice system. The vast majority of youth offenses aren't violent, and most young people who make a mistake won't repeat it. Their brains continue to develop and they make better decisions. But for those who do break the law, the way we hold them accountable matters. In most juvenile justice systems, the most common way we hold them accountable is through probation. And it's typically like a long list of rules that they have to follow. And if they mess up, they can get locked up. I wanted you to think about, where is this going? What are we doing to adolescents if we give them a long list of things to do and we know their brains aren't really prepared to follow a long list of rules? So it's full of these must-dos and should-dos, really set young people up to fail because it's not aligned with the science. So that's why we worked with juvenile justice systems and community partners in Tacoma, Washington, to come up with something called opportunity-based probation. So instead of focusing on punishment, it focuses on rewards, and it helps focus on progress. So young people set goals, and they earn points for their positive behavior. Like if they attend school and show up on time, they can earn points and exchange that for movie tickets or opportunities for mentoring or shadowing, job shadowing opportunities. And here's something we learn over and over and over again. When you ask a young person who helped them get back on track, it's never a program. It's never a punishment. It is a person. It is a person who stood by them. It's a probation officer who believed in them. It is a mentor who showed up consistently. It's an employer who gave them a second chance. And opportunity-based probation is creating the space for those relationships to take root. And it shifts the role of a probation officer from surveillance to coach. And that relational shift matters because accountability without relationship feels like control, but accountability with relationship creates growth. And the results have been actually quite striking. Youth in this model had 67% fewer probation violations, 67% fewer. And it resulted in more than half of those young people who might have been locked up getting locked up. So hugely different impact. And we know it's because it works with adolescent brain science and the way young people are wired for rewards, not against it. And it recognizes that development actually happens in relationship. And today, more than 24 sites across the country are using probation strategies like this. We're hoping to expand it to even more because they understand when young people stumble, we need to strengthen the bridge and walk with them, not push them off the bridge. That brings, I hope that's a yay. That brings me to one final example that's closely aligned with the focus of our conversation today in this conference, and that's how to help young people succeed in school and work. We've all heard the concerns about Generation Z in the workplace, from rising unemployment to questions about communication skills and productivity, but it's important to look beneath those challenges. Entry-level jobs are disappearing, pathways into stable careers are narrowing. So for many young people, especially those from low-income communities or disinvested communities, the first step onto that bridge of adulthood feels out of reach. But here's what I know. Young people want to work. Just look at a summer job program, which I'm sure exists in every community that you all live and work in. Thousands of young people show up to apply, and there are never enough slots. In my hometown of Baltimore, where Casey is based, more than 13,000 young people showed up for a summer job last year, and we only had 8,500 slots. How does that counteract the narrative that young people don't want to work? That's not laziness, that is unmet demand. And that's us not building enough on-ramps. And many of them have to work, not just for themselves, but to help cover the rent and groceries and other needs in their households. So how do we help more young people transition to work? Well, the science tells us how. Adolescents learn best by doing. They are wired for rewards. They're developing these judgment and impulse control capabilities in real time. And so why would we wait until their mid-20s to give them their first opportunity at work? And so that's the idea behind the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship, or PIA. PIA partners with states, school systems, and employers to create high-quality youth apprenticeships during high school. So young people earn money, they gain skills, and they get to build relationships with the adults in the workplace. And sometimes they even get college credit along the way. And so like the other two examples I shared, PIA is working because it reflects how young people like to learn. More than 2,400 young people across the country have already been prepared for high-demand careers in healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and hospitality thanks to PIA. And it connects effort to reward and combines responsibility with guidance and allows young people to see themselves not as problems to be fixed, but as contributors to their economy. It isn't charity, it's a strategy. And when we design apprenticeships and internships and entrepreneurship programs that combine skill building with coaching, we don't just prepare young people for work, we help them build identity, purpose, and independence during this amazingly important time of their lives. So that's how we widen the bridge. But the operative word is we. Casey Foundation can't do this by itself. And neither can school systems or employers or child welfare systems. It's going to take all of us, researchers, policymakers, funders, employers, and families, all stepping in to be bridge builders, to help all those millions of young people get across the bridge. We got the science, we got the strategies. What we need now is alignment and the courage to design our systems around what we know. And I'm excited to be in a room of people who are working hard to do that. There's one more thing we got to address. That's the narrative. The stories we tell about young people shape the systems that we build around them. And when we label teens as lazy or as reckless or as entitled, it affects real decisions. Employers hesitate to hire. Policymakers default to punishment instead of development. Parents worry that they're doing something wrong. And young people themselves feel demonized and demoralized. Those stereotypes have consequences. And so that's why this science matters. It gives a developmental explanation for the behaviors that too often get mislabeled as character flaws. It explains risk-taking as exploration and explains that growth is uneven by design. So when we understand development, we design differently. So that's really why I wrote Thrive. Not because I thought I was the best person to explain the science to anybody, but because I thought it could help contribute to this collective understanding about what's happening so that all of us could see adolescence isn't a problem to manage, that it's a great period of possibility. So if we fortify the bridge, widen the path, and change the story, we won't just help young people survive the journey, we will help them grow into the employees, parents, leaders, and citizens they want to be and that we all want them to be. So when young people thrive, we all thrive. And I'm excited to join you in helping make that happen. Thank you.